Hi, I'm Rita Gehman, and today's book review is on Sleeping with the Enemy, Coco Chanel's Secret War, and it is by Hal Vaughan, and this was a really good book. It talked about Coco Chanel's life, about how she was an orphan, and then it goes into how she dealt with things as a teenager, as a woman in her 20s, and all of her experience with fashion and the fashion industry, and the famous Coco Chanel No. 5 perfume. It listed her activities all the way to the end of her life. This is an extremely well researched book. It has a picture of her on the back. Also, the book has many pictures of her inside of it, which just makes it all the more interesting. But this book is very well researched. This is a picture of some German Third Reich SS officials that were employed under Himmler in the during the Great War. And the book discusses all of these different things that Coco Chanel did throughout her life. It talks about her energy and how she had this mesmerizing energy, even as a teenager and even as a 19-year-old, all the way up to in her 70s, and even at the age of 80, she had a boyfriend who was 30 years younger than her, and she was in another country from France because she was hiding from the law at that point. Now, the title of the book, Sleeping with the Enemy, refers to the possible affair that she was having with a German official during that time. Coco Chanel had strong Jewish blood in her blood, even though she was an orphan. It was pretty much known that she was a Jew. And Jewish women in the Third Reich were butchered, they were raped, they were sent to the death camps. And I've read another book called Eyewitness Auschwitz that talks about all the things that actually happened. It's by Philip Miller, and it talks about his experience working in the death camps as one of the Jewish helpers for 3.5 years, which is very enlightening. So Coco Chanel, being able to speak fluent German, and even though she lived in France and was French, she had this ability to cross the culture, and she probably knew, especially since she was around the Hitler's top officials frequently, she probably knew exactly how bad it could get for any Jew, for a Jewish woman, for her, no matter what. So she probably took steps to ensure her safety. In Paris, the entire city evacuated before the Blitzkrieg arrived. However, because they could hear the bombings in the distance, and everybody just emptied the city. She stayed in the city. She kept her business running in the city, actually, and she stayed in the one hotel that was still functioning and still served actual food, and actually decent food with dessert and everything. And she was able to stay in that hotel with other German officials, and she had her own apartment and everything like that. Now, it was often said that she was sleeping with a particular German official, but since this was, and there are actually, not only was this researched throughout her entire life was researched by Hal Vaughan, the author of this book, right here, but she was also really, see, these are all the notes to the pages, and there are hundreds of them, as you see. But she was able to do something that it probably helped bring France and the rest of the world, and help France's economy after the war, and it probably saved her own life during the war. And she and other people who were a part of the movement, they watched on a bridge as after the war, after peace was declared, they watched as French women who had, slept with German officers were dragged out into the streets, and they were, their noses were slit and they were cut, their heads were shaved, and, no and whore and pretty much anything they could think of were written on their faces in ink. And some of them I think were tattooed, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, and there's a picture of that too. And Coco Chanel would have stood out on the bridge, and she stood out on the bridge, and she would have seen this, and she would have wondered if the same thing was going to happen to her, either by the French people, just as she escaped something far worse happening at the hands of the Germans. So it was a situation where she was brought to court for crimes against the country several times, but she escaped and took solitude. What is the word? Anyway, she escaped to another country, and she took solitude in that country. And I can't remember if it was Sweden or Switzerland. It was an SW name, but anyway, this book talks about her life to the very end of her life, and it shows many, many pictures of her from a very young woman all the way up to being quite elderly, and how she still maintained her looks and her style and her fashion, and how extremely expert she was at everything she did. And I really recommend this book for people who are interested in the war, who are interested in Germany, who are interested in France, who are interested in fashion, in the fashion industry, who are interested in Coco Chanel at all, and who are interested in the No. 5 perfume.